get upset on the internet. You're a salt adult.
Hi everybody and welcome to Retro Station 1989. I'm Commander Dan, the commander and lone human inhabitant aboard the Retro Station. The show you're watching today is called License to Play. It's a show where we evaluate licensed properties as far as video games go. Things like, well, comic books, movies, other video games from the arcade, or board games, or even snack foods, or sometimes even a soda pop. We've done a lot of these shows. And this month of June is the beginning of Superhero Summer. And this week we're having a very, very special time playing a very, very special game and evaluating one of my favorite titles for the Super Nintendo. You clicked on the title, so you already know what we're doing, but I'll pretend like you don't. And if you've never been here before, welcome aboard, Space Pirates. And this means you. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe. And if you liked it, thumbs up. It lets me know if you want to see more of this show or more of me doing my, well, boudoir photos and my burlesque dancing. I see no hands. All right, well, we'll continue doing this show then. So, this is Superhero Summer, and
Commander Dan, I have been informed our sponsors from Planet X will have an announcement and change of parameters for our evaluations, apparently.
What does that mean exactly? Is it to do with the election of the new Grand Chancellor or Grand Supreme Leader Boss of Planet X?
Unknown, but if it eases your anxiety at all, they sounded excited and not angry in the least. So it is probably not the vaporization of this facility and your planet. Does that ease your mind?
No, it doesn't. But thanks for the information. Okay, well, I got some things to get in order before my possible whatever they're going to do to us happens. But this week, we're going to talk about some hot button topics. We're going to talk about the Intellivision Amico and its magnificent creator, Tammy Talamancano. Hold on. This says Tommy Tallarico. Yeah, they actually do tie into this a little bit. And we're probably going to talk about WATA games at some point a little bit as well. Anyway. And of course the game we're going to talk about is probably that as well. But, in fact, this video has been 2 years in the making. And I'll be honest, and hundreds of dollars of investment into the bargain. So before we begin, let's start in on a background of our story of how I got the game before we begin on the background of the story of the subject of this week's evaluation, alright? And I think we'll talk first about a guy who loves superheroes as much as I do. Almost. Maybe? Just watch. This is Tommy Tallarico.
Are you ready? Yeah!
Please note, this may be all total lies and gibberish. But where do I start with this dude? Okay, dude has like 50 world records for shit you can't believe. He's been on MTV Cribs. He worked with the Blue Sky Rangers of the original Mattel Intellivision game to bring that brand into the future with his ingenuity and professional communication skills to create the modern tour de force piece of console tech that is destined to disrupt the current console market space for family fun and same couch multiplayer, while still embracing a controller design that seems like it would kinda not fit with modern aesthetics or functionality, but who cares? This is Tommy.
Are you ready? Yeah!
Tommy T. That's right, he did noises and farts and moos and music for all kinds of video games, except for the classical pieces that he didn't write, and Wipeout, which he played but didn't actually do on Cool Spot. Oh, and Earthworm Jams. Or no, what was it? Earthwing James? Whatever his name is. Earthworm Jims? Earthworm Jims. Earthsworm Jim. EWJ. Whatever. This guy. So Tommy was the first American also to work on Sonic the Hedgehog. He was first American. He's best friends with Shigeru Miyamoto after he did all the sound effects for Metroid Prime and conducted 19 orchestras in China at the same time in the world's largest arena ever. And
my mother's very proud.
Yeah, his mother's very proud of him. I mean, somebody has to be, right? Oh, man. Oh, and he is the Roblox oof guy. You know, the oof sound from Roblox that Sounds like a kid getting kicked in the nuts. That sound. This sound here. The most popular sound of all time, and the very reason anybody knows what a row or a blocks is, or a Roblox, or whatever that is. And this is the guy. He invented that sound. He probably made that sound with his own mouth. Because did you know the sound effects of him hitting the pavement with his oversized melon is the sound of everyone hitting their heads on the pavement in Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1? It's probably true. Look, Tommy Tallarico is a luminary of the video game realm the size of a planet. He is a globally shining light. Which means, as I understand it, he's a trash fire you can see from space. And the Amico? Holy shit. Okay. It's going to revolutionize home gaming, he says. Yeah, with games exclusive to that platform and only playable using this weird-ass bar of soap with an iPad touch wheel and a screen you'd find on a drug dealer's burner phone. And last but not least, he's pasta pals with his fellow Paisan, Pat Contry, the NES punk. But not really. Like I said, okay, Tommy Tallarico is a known liar. Half the shit I just said was partially false or completely untrue. It's just fun to point out when a tiny shit stain pretends to be a big old skid mark in the world of anything, and they get burnt by those dipshit claims on the internet. H. Bomber Guy does this in a fashion that I am in awe of. He dismantles Tommy's lies in general in a beautiful long-form girthy video regarding Tomby Tallamarinkadink's past and what's actually probably true. But the section of this constant fabricator's life I want to discuss is his obsession with getting the Intellivision Amico off the ground. The Intellivision Amico is not a foot bath or a shoe polisher, even though it looks like one. It's in fact a video game system running on 2016 hardware and an OS designed by, well, I mean, there is no OS yet. In fact, I think they're still looking for somebody to write that part of the architecture. Anyway, it's a Raspberry Pi in a box. Like you'd imagine something like this would be if we're basically producing mobile games at home with a weird touchscreen controller that vaguely reminds people that they hated the Intellivision controller. As a matter of fact, most people's recollection of the Intellivision is, and it's my recollection as well, was, oh yeah, the Intellivision. Great graphics, and what a fun system. Shame about the controller, though. And if you're wondering who said that, it was every single person who ever picked up an Intellivision controller. Even people who pretend that they didn't, okay? Your commander, my lovely space pirates, is old. I'm older than Noah's Trapper Keeper. Older than Old Man Ronson's oldest set of wooden dentures. So I remember actually owning an Atari 2600 as our primary video game system. And our neighbors, a set of twins who kind of looked exactly like the actors from the sitcom Valerie's Family. Anyway, they had an Intellivision. We were hanging out playing boxing on our Atari, which for the record looks like racist crabs boxing in a grass-covered yard. And one of the twins, Jason, says, have you played Burger Time? And I asked, like, in the arcade? And he says, folks, this is when I got caught up in the graphics game. He goes, no, Burger Time on the Intellivision. Because when we got to their house that morning, Burger Time on the Intellivision looked almost like the arcade. But the music was the arcade music. Now, while the Atari 2600 had to lean on its extravagant box and manual art to give you a hint or suggestion of what you were playing, the Intellivision looked like the thing it was telling you were playing. And the one problem is, it had this crappy piece of wood grain shit for a controller. If you had to guess how this thing controls anything with its side carriage buttons and a flat dinner plate you have to smash down and grind against the circuit board with your thumb, if you had to guess how that works, you'd still guess wrong. I could give you the actual thing to play with for a moment, and you'd still guess wrong as to how it was supposed to work. This thing sucked. Hard. On ice. The Amico was going to use a modern version of suck, which Tommy refused to admit was a cash grab from folks with permanent nostalgia goggles like myself. I mean, this is the retro station. I'm a retro guy. So of course, I pre-ordered one of the wood grain monstrosities and all of the games it would launch with. It was $150 for the pre-order, and $160 for the 8 games at $20 a pop. To say I ordered these out of spite, would be partially accurate. I kind of wanted it to succeed. You know, I liked the underdog, but then the more I learned about the Amico and how far behind it was, and, you know, the games I ordered to prove that the games would be of value because there was an argument going on between Generation Gap Gaming and a bunch of other people that these games wouldn't have any value. And I was on his side. I said, no, these games will have value no matter what. In fact, these boxes, just so long as you keep them sealed, will have a lot of value. In fact, they probably are worth more now than they were when I sold them, and they were worth, well, quite a bit when I sold them. Look what I brought to the Midwest Gaming Classic. That's right, all the Amico games. So, Generation Gap, I'm going to go ahead and sell these today. Did you happen to see anybody who wants them, or are you going to keep them for yourself?
No, I already have a set, but
I have my extra set at home.
I also have a store in Chicago.
Oh, fantastic!
I'll put 'em out
I
there.
hope somebody gets them, and man, I hope that it does all well for you, because it did well for me, man. And believe me,
Cool.
that's a great price for it. And I was like blown away by the like.
I'm glad you'll get some use.
Oh, dude, I will. I'm gonna put it on the show. I'm gonna open it because I gotta play it, but
Yeah.
I will eat that cost because a fellow fan of the Intellivision got those copies. So Sean and I came to a bargain, an accord, if you will, on the games versus something. Which is why we're talking about Tommy and these stupid controllers and this stupid game system and all these dumb games that you see me here brandishing at the Midwest Gaming Classic that I was a guest at. And yeah, so basically I ordered them to prove that game collectors like myself were goofy dingleberries who don't know what the hell we're doing most times. And I was able to turn my purchase of $160 from Intellivision into the game I'm reviewing today. That's right, folks. I flipped all of those games for a game I got sealed, complete in box. And boy, oh boy, I made out like a bandit. Yep, I flipped the games. And shortly thereafter, when the last of the major delays were announced for the albatross known as the Amico, I pulled my pre-order. Luckily, I got my cash back. Some folks didn't. I feel for those folks because it sucks being locked into something that doesn't ever materialize.
Commander, apologies for the interruption. The sponsors from Planet X are uploading their message for you now. Administrator Beverly will be contacting us via hologrammatic broadcast.
Wow, thanks, Margot. Sounds like whatever this is, it's big. Big as, well, a comic event. An earth-shattering event. The death of Superman. But who is Superman? Superman is a comic book superhero. Well, of course. I mean, everyone knows the basics about Superman. He was created in 1932 by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. These are a pair of Canadian students whose families escaped war-torn Europe. They were both Jewish lads, and in an awesome twist on the fascistic image of the Ubermensch, a.k.a. in English, the Superman, the Aryan Superman, and they created the American version, American Superman. But his story has been told over and over and in many ways. Comics, cartoons, newspaper comics. But what always seems the same, it seems, is that the baby Kal-El is sent to Earth from Krypton, a doomed world of scientific wonder. He is found by Midwestern Americans and raised with fundamental goodness and all-American nobility, and becomes a hero in the big city, protecting the planet in the name of truth, justice, and the American way. He was the embodiment of good, and hell, he even helped defeat the KKK in the real-ass world. This is absolutely true. The Superman radio show was written with actual information on the Klan, and the FBI used that information to take down them backwards-ass cowardly crackers for the sake of truth, justice, and the American way. So Superman's brand is, America is swell, I'm a big blue Boy Scout, but more than that, his brand says, you can count on me to be there for you as the best representation of what humanity can be. A living inspiration to the values of good, charity, and justice. But like all famous characters, especially characters over 75 years old, the character started to wear a little thin. So Superman's profile has gone up and down over time. Popularity waxing and waning and
Commander, I have stored the relevant political advertisements, but it will take some time to translate them from Exian to Earth languages.
Thanks, Cambot Jr. Great work. Any word on the messages from the sponsors, Margot?
Affirmative, Commander. We need to be in the correct geosync to receive it, which looks like 7 Earth days.
Okie dokie. Looks like we got some time to kill. So let's dive into what was going on back in the past. And what year are we talking about? And so it was in the year 1992, the year of Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter II, that the arcades were coming back. You know, in comics too, things were getting a little harsher. Lobo was a character that was hardcore, violent, grim, and gritty, and also rode a badass space motorcycle. The comics world was in a tumult. Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, Todd McFarlane, and Eric Larson founded Image Comics on the idea that creators of comics have rights to the royalties that they create, and that people should get money for the things they create, and folks who made characters into moneymakers deserve a piece of the pie. Gee, it seems like that's a problem that ain't going anywhere anytime soon, as you can tell today, as the WGA is still on strike. Hashtag solidarity WGA. That's what I say. The rumors in the comic industry that year were firing all over the place, but at DC Comics, a character created and beloved for decades was in the doldrums. Superman, the last son of Krypton, the scion of the greatest scientific civilization in the universe, came to Earth and was raised by a Midwestern American family, and with all that entails, stood for the greatest aspects of upholding the tenets of truth, justice, and the American way. Was it jingoistic? Sure. But that American way stuff was created in 50s TV. The Red Scare was going strong, so if you didn't add something like that to your show, you probably wouldn't even have a show. Or the conservative hate mob would have called you a communist or something. And that's crazy. Superman would never be a communist. That doesn't count. Anyway, Superman in the 80s and 90s was viewed as corny. He was viewed as antiquated, and his American way stance becoming more and more politically iffy, and old-fashioned, but more than anything, boring. In fact, DC Comics' Dan Jurgens, who I was lucky enough to have a serious conversation about Superman with at Wizard World Madison just before the pandemic, answered a couple of my questions. My main question for him was this: why did you guys at DC decide to kill Superman back in the 90s, I asked. Dan Jurgens said that Jerry Ordway, one of my favorite Superman creators, when the editorial crew exasperatedly asked, "Hey everybody, how can we make Superman pop again and make him relevant?" Jerry's joke answer every year at every meeting was to say, "Kill Superman. Kill him." I was shocked. But I shouldn't have been, because when he suggested this in 1991, DC noted that comic fans and the world in general have been taking Superman for granted. What happens when we show them what our world looks like without Superman? Meaning their DC universe. And what does it look like? It's pretty terrible, to be honest. So the plan begins with an ominous countdown in 1991, counting down to something. Everyone was wondering what it was counting down to. And then in Action Comics 684, what a one-man crisis, Doomsday, explodes across the Superman family of comics, destroying the Justice League's B team, standing in as the Justice League for that time in a matter of seconds. Doomsday cannot be stopped. Not by a Green Lantern, not by Blue Beetle. No one can stop Doomsday. At a point, Booster Gold has been punched so hard that his Legion flight ring, a future device to give the Legion of Superheroes the same toughness and flight as Superman, Doomsday one-punches this fool into the sky and overrides the ring's ability to fly or keep straight. So Booster's hurtling through the sky and may not survive this flight into wherever he happens to land. I always hope that Booster's last thoughts are about how he kind of wished he'd done more as a superhero than try to make a buck. And then, Superman saves him. Because of course Superman saves him. Because Superman is the hero. And of course, I'm sure everyone reading it rolled their eyes and said, "Oh, here we go." Even though you're reading the Superman comic, you're still like, come on. Of course Superman saves him. So Booster Gold is stopped in mid-flight by Superman, and Superman asks what's going on. And Booster Gold names the monster by saying he thinks Doomsday is here. Superman arrives to the fight scene to find that Blue Beetle is near death, and the battle with Doomsday begins. He withstands Doomsday's first punch, a punch in the gut, the one punch Doomsday just beat the whole Justice League with. By the way, he beat the Justice League with an arm tied behind his back. And Superman has all the swagger and bravo the hero, the one, ought to have. Took that punch and said, "Hey, you silly bastard, I'm Superman." So Doomsday kicks him through a whole damn house. The fight rages with Superman and Doomsday across the Midwest all the way to Metropolis. Fans of Dragon Ball Z understand the kind of destruction two of the most powerful beings in a series fighting one another can do. And to give you an idea of how bad Superman losing this fight could be, let's go back and just take a look at what Doomsday did to Booster Gold. Right. The fight ends on the doorstep of the Daily Planet, with Superman deciding he needs to end Doomsday, and they exchange blows. And in the comic, Dan Jurgens writes, "Like weary boxers who have gone the distance, the combatants collide in one last explosive effort. In the years to come, a few witnesses will tell of the power of these final punches, that they could literally feel the shock waves. Others will remember the enormous crater that resulted from the sheer force of the blows, but most will remember this sad day as the day the proudest, most noble man they ever knew finally fell. It goes on for a few pages, and on a 2-page spread that lets the reader know everything you need to know, that Superman has died and is dead. There's a shredded Superman, a wailing Lois Lane, and rubble. He's truly dead. And for one day, at least, America went batshit. Okay? The news was talking about this shit. Songs were written about it. Seriously. The Crash Test Dummies wrote and performed Superman's song, which, at the time, when I heard it the first time, I was sitting in my car waiting for a buddy to get mainstream comics for years at that point. I did like some comics, but most comics I didn't like. I thought they were boring. And here I am crying like a psycho about Superman of all characters. The most boring, most goody two-shoes, most cheesy hero of all time. But now he was dead. And DC, those bastards, those crafty sons of beaches, got exactly what they wanted. For a comics fan, a lapsed fan of Superman, to feel like they took Superman for granted. Of course, it took the Crash Test Dummies to make me feel like that officially, but they spelled it out. Superman never made any money, saving the world from Solomon Grundy. And sometimes I despair the world will never see another man like him. And after Superman died, a series came out called Reign of the Supermen. 4 heroes arrived seemingly portraying the reborn Superman. First was the Cyborg. DNA scans show in the comic that it's Kal-El of Krypton's DNA brought back by Kryptonian technology. And then there's the Eradicator. Okay, you're not supposed to know Visor Superman, the last son of Krypton, is the Eradicator, but it was pretty obvious that it's the Eradicator. Just by the way it talks and the way it behaves, it's clearly the Eradicator. It's the Eradicator. Finally, Superboy, the clone of Superman, partially Lex Luthor, which you don't find out for a really long time, but everyone guessed right away. And lastly, Steel, John Henry Irons, who ain't Superman, and they don't pretend he is, and he doesn't even claim to be. But as the story unfolds, it turns out the Cyborg is actually the mind of DC Universe's version of a mad scientist, Reed Richards, named Hank Henshaw, who transmitted his mind into Superman's arrival rocket and is back to destroy Superman's name by using Mongol's war world to destroy Green Lantern's hometown, Coast City, which he does. And that's a whole nother kettle of fish. Finally, the real Superman comes back because, of course, he does, and the story goes on and on and on. But more importantly, a year following this event in comics, superhero video game superstars SUNSOFT created the Death and Return of Superman for the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. This comic series was a whole 2 years of my life. No lie, my junior and senior years of high school were, well, dedicated to the death and return of Superman. I watched the death and return of this hero, and my friends and I were debating who the real Supes was. And I'm ashamed to admit, I backed the Cyborg Superman. I mean, in the comics, he's got, like, the DNA of Clark Kent and Kryptonian technology. I mean, like, that seemed like enough evidence for me. Great job, comics, of making me suspect everything, even DNA evidence. Now, he was the villain of the piece, ultimately. But in 1994, one of the last titles I ever bought for the Super Nintendo was, indeed, SUNSOFT's Death and Return of Superman. You'll see that there's a little weird splotch here. Look. It just shows the background. That's because the sticker's in green. The sticker reads $250. Yeah, this was a pricey title because, well, when I bought it, it came sealed. And sealed games are a hot commodity these days. So yeah, that price tag's a little big, I'd say. Well, anyway, let's look and see if it was worth what I paid for it. $250. I didn't really. Actually, I paid more like, well, what's 250 minus 150? That's right, I paid $100 for this. And it was sealed. I mean, it was worth $100. If you look on eBay, that's what it's worth. But let's see if it's worth what I actually paid for it. In today's evaluation of Death and Return of Superman by SUNSOFT for the Super Nintendo. The Death and Return of Superman is not the first superhero game SUNSOFT was involved with. Their greatest triumph, in my opinion, is probably the 1988 Batman game for NES, or perhaps Return and Revenge of the Joker for the NES and Sega Genesis. Those games were great, and while they did have a game in the works for NES based on Superman, it didn't end up working out. They also did a Revenge of the Joker, I believe it was, for this the Game Boy, which was okay. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad either. But in 1994, SUNSOFT produced a beat-em-up for SNES based on the Death and Return of Superman comic series. It even starts with the pre-Doomsday stuff against the Underworlders and their plot to destroy Metropolis, all the way through the final battle against the cyborg Superman in Engine City. The game uses a lot of the panel work from the comics and does a fantastic job of telling the story of the Death and Return of Superman. Let's take a look at how this game rates in the biggest categories: graphics and sound, gameplay, and finally, is it true to the source code? Is it true to the source material that it's based on? This game, first and foremost, looks great. Each of the characters you play look nearly identical to their comic counterparts. Now, the game has beat-em-up sections and shooter sections, and while it looks good and the background damage is great, it's a fun little mechanic, it's not exactly a great leap forward in game mechanics, which is one of the main complaints from reviewers at the time. And this is definitely a dark omen for future games, as this game's reviews dried up the superhero genre of video game beat-em-ups, in the mold of Final Fight or Streets of Rage anyway, for an all-new, innovative model. But that's a story for another time. Next time, actually. But the sound and controls for this game are great. Moves are easy to execute, it's fun to move around and clobber bad guys, especially as OG Soups, who's a bruiser and a half. But Cyborg, Eradicator, Steel, and Superboy all play very well. It's not exactly difficult, but the game is 10 levels of beat-em-up and shooter action, and it follows the story with great cutscenes. So, if you ask me, does it represent the property it's based on? Well, check this out. From the time Soups is killed by Doomsday, which is a much milder version of the one found in the comics, to the final battle against the cyborg Superman in Engine City, the game hits all of the story beats. First, Cyborg Superman delves into the Cadmus Project to retrieve the body of Doomsday, and then as each of the heroes show up and present themselves in Metropolis as the heir to the throne, so to speak, we go and get a level playing as each one of those guys. After each of these levels, we get to the point where Cyborg Superman betrays the Eradicator and destroys Coast City. The game's final moments culminate in a fantastic battle between OG Soups and the giant cyborg. A chaotic battle of epic proportions that make the ending of Final Fantasy VII look like the ending of Final Fantasy I. Just kidding. This is the end of the game. But there you go. Is it fun? Well, hell yes. Is it difficult? Maybe a little bit. But the only question that really matters is, so, does the Death and Return of Superman by SUNSOFT for the Super Nintendo have a license to play? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this game is hard, but it's not Nintendo hard. It's just one of those things you have to adapt to. The timing of the punches and the different powers that the different Supermen have. But yes, absolutely, you've got to check this out. Not for $250, sealed or not, okay? I'm getting tired of the pricing of video games. I want to show you something here. On my buddy Kronos' show, I actually opened the sealed copy, and I opened the box and took the game out, and I made a joke. I said, you guys, you know what's in these sealed copies? There's video games in here. And I'm going to show you something else. I just got this wonderful sealed copy of Golgo 13 Top Secret Episode. I sent off a couple pictures, or actually I'm going to at the time of this shooting, to my buddy Pat Contry and Ian Ferguson over at the Completely Unnecessary Podcast and see what they think, if this is a genuine seal or not. I have my doubts. But it also looks like that the company, the guys who sold it to me, also have their doubts, because the price I paid for this, under $20. Under $20 for a sealed NES cartridge. That's how I know the whole business is bullshit. And if you're actually taking advantage of that and hiking up the prices on your games because they're sealed, you're in for a world of worry and hurt when they prove that, well, there's something shady going on. We don't know what, but something shady is going on. Don't be dumb, all right? These are only worth as much as you invest in them. If that. Sometimes in a game of Golgo 13, you're going to have to want to like the game. You're going to have to really want to like the game to have the first one be one of the games that you collect for. I happen to like the first and the second one, but this one, we'll talk about this one later. In the meantime, we've got Superhero Month continuing, and next week we're going to go over one of the most, notorious superhero games I think I've ever played. More notorious than Superman for the NES? Yes, definitely. More notorious than Batman Dark Tomorrow? No. But it is a Batman game, and I'll tell you what, if you can guess which one it is, down below in the comment section, I'll send you a little care package from the old retro station. We'll jettison out some of the stuff that's sitting on our shelves, which we are cleaning off at a rapid pace, and you'll get yourself a little no prize, which is a letter from your old Commander Dan saying, congrats, you figured it out, and a bunch of retro stuff from the retro station. What could it be? This will be in the next one. I reviewed, Wild Thornberries. Rambler. I happened across this game at a convention, and then I purchased it, and then I played it, and now you can have it all the way from space. All you have to do is guess what next week's evaluation is going to be down below in the comments section, and give me suggestions. If you have games you'd like me to check out, I happily will look them up. I'm still waiting on getting a copy of Rock and Roll Racing, but that is coming up. It is a licensed game, both from the Amiga where it came out and for the music that's in it. That's been kind of a choppy issue here on YouTube, so we're doing it, but it's going to take a couple days or so for me to plan around that. And besides, it's currently the superhero summer. So, next week we'll have all those ads, whatever they are, translated. That'll be good. And our announcement from Planet X, as our sponsors there, and Superhero Month continues. So no matter what I've said during this broadcast, or I've said in the past, or will say in the future, remember to always, always, always stay retro. Peace.
Get upset on the internet. You're a salt adult. You're a salt adult. Get upset on the internet. You're a salt adult. Throwing out a hissy fit, your views ain't in the millions, and every up and comer is a threat to what you're dealing. And instead of getting better, you just spout up on your Facebook, crying on your Twitter bit about how bad your case look. In case you didn't get it yet, allow me to rephrase it. You cry more than my 4-year-old, I'm actually amazed. Like you couldn't even see the forest for the trees. The writing's on the wall, literally there to see. How you getting salt that a culture blowing up, man? I think there was a point where you stopped growing up, man. Instead of showing up, man, irrationally mad. Don't appropriate impression like the latest fashion fad. It isn't cool or funny to be acting like an edgelord. You alienate friends, pushing closer to the edge more. I don't know how to say it anyway to make it clear. If you're the one unhappy, then the problem's in the mirror. Get upset on the internet. You're a salt adult. You're a salt adult. Get upset on the internet. You're a salt adult. The net is a repository for the vast expanses of human knowledge and all the technological advances, and I can't say enough how you gotta be open-minded. Yes, if you're looking for a fight, then you damn well find it. An axe needs grinding, you're not alone. There's a million other nerds who can bitch and moan and groan about how this a release date delay of the new game. Man, decrease the cliche of your neckbeard. I'm a fear to the intensity of your love for two characters. You claim I've got some chemistry and they belong together. Every other ship is toast. Call you Cortez when you're like, burn the boat. Said your ship is sunk and you stunk like the blogger who insisted to you. The review versus Harry Potter versus Julia Roberts. The latter's the victor. You're about to make a victim of some asshole hipster. Get upset on the internet. You're a salt adult. You're a salt adult. Get upset on the internet. You're a salt adult. S-A-L-T. S-A-L-T. You look stupid, a real ass. When they heard your rant, the people laughed. But please stop, or abort. You're whining like you wanna win some award. S-A-L-T. You're a salt adult. You're a salt adult.